just a hack. He's just an absolute hack. And he gets his ass kicked by his teammates every week. It's just, it's terrible. It's just terrible.
Welcome back to another episode of the Believe in NFL Draft Prospects podcast. I'm Joe DeLeone here with Ryan Roberts. We've got the last position group week for you here, and then we're going to transition our focus into the college football season, talking more headlines in relation to scouting. We'll make that pivot when the time comes because college football is really freaking close. It is so goddamn close, and I can almost taste it, Ryan. But we've got safeties, and watching the safety film is calming myself a little bit. It's me getting that, the little kick so I can last one more week till the season starts. We are starting things off with a very fun pairing. Jordan Battle from Alabama and Brandon Joseph, previously of Northwestern, now of the University of Notre Dame. We're going to be breaking these guys down. Ryan, you excited to talk about these players?
I am, man. I'm excited for Safety Week in general. Not only is it there was an ad that just popped up on a different screen. It's the last week of summer scouting for us positionally. It's also a class that I think it's a very an enigma, I guess is the word for the safety group. Cause I just don't know what to think about it right now, and we're starting with a couple of the top names, and I keep some pretty intriguing players keep popping up on my radar a little bit. So this is one class where I wasn't super excited about it, to be honest, but as I'm kind of digging deeper in, I think the safety group might actually have a little something to it. So I'm excited to talk about these two though, because they're very different players, but they are two of the bigger names, obviously, in the class right now.
Yeah, these two guys that we're starting with are the big names, certainly. And I think we'll be able to properly illustrate how they'll fit in the class. I don't know how many first-round guys there were. I was expecting coming into this show for there to be two surefire first-rounders. And after watching both of them, I don't think I agree with that anymore. I think we've got one guy who will be a first-rounder and then another guy that's a little bit of a question mark and has some work to be done.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see. It's
Okay.
I think it's we have two players that are very diverse skill sets today. Very different football players from one another, in my opinion. And then, of course, we're taking a look at some of the bigger safeties, which I think could get you really excited, because you're a big guy fan, right? So,
I love my big boys.
We got a couple 6'3" plus safeties on the docket for tomorrow, but for today, these are kind of the more free safety types, I guess. These are more like the rangy guys playing on the roof type of thing. So interesting pairing today.
What's the biggest safety that we can watch? Weight wise, not height, weight wise. Is there like a 240 pounder?
No, I don't think there's a 240 pounder. JL Skinner that we're watching tomorrow with Antonio Johnson from Texas A&M. The Boise State safety, JL Skinner, I believe, is 220 something pounds at 6'4". So he's a big fella. He's a big fella.
I love that. I'm excited. Let's get to Joseph and Battle. Before we do, I want to tell you folks about BetOnline. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports contests and events. With first-to-market odds and lines, fine reviews, and news for every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information, from live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50 to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Ryan, Jordan Battle has a very fitting name because he's a very aggressive hitter. I'll leave it at that. Background on Jordan Battle, someone who could have been in last year's class and I think was anticipated to be in last year's class, decides to come back, and he still remains as the favorite to be safety one this upcoming year.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely in the conversation, for sure. So Jordan Battle, pretty much consensus top 100 recruit coming out of St. Thomas Aquinas in Florida, which is in the Fort Lauderdale area. And if you know anything about high school recruiting or high school football, St. Thomas Aquinas is one of the premier programs across the nation. Joe, I know a lot of people talked about when Patrick Surtain Jr. came out a couple years ago, he was in the same defensive backfield at St. Thomas Aquinas with Tyson Campbell, who went in the very early second rounds. Well, I went back and looked at the St. Thomas Aquinas roster from Jordan Battle's junior year. So he was in a secondary that included Al Blades, who was a starter at Miami. On the other side was Asante Samuel Jr., who was a starter at Florida State, now Los Angeles Chargers. He also played with Nick Benito, the linebacker out of Oklahoma that was drafted pretty highly as well. So St. Thomas Aquinas puts out some pretty good talent, man. Like that's all we kind of need to say about that conversation, right? They put out a just silly amount of talent, and he was obviously a very highly recruited kid, top 100 kid. Chose Alabama over the likes of Miami, was one of the big schools on near the top of his list as well. So he has been a guy that we have known now for several years. I think this is going to be his third year as a full-time starter, and he's played every year. He came in as a true freshman and got some easy playing time for Alabama. So Jordan Battle is a guy that we've been well aware of. Like you said, he could have came out last year, but he came back, I think, because there is a quest potentially to be the first safety off the board. So we'll see how that winds up for him. But he wasn't going to be first safety off the board last year, but it seems like it's a less crowded safety group at the top right now in 2023.
Yeah, there was a lot of competition for that top safety spot last year, and I think this actually benefits him going back. And it's also funny too that Brandon Joseph was also in that, maybe not safety one discussion, but there was speculation. I remember you and Alex were high on Brandon Joseph, saying that if he hit his potential, he could very well be somebody selected in the end of the first round. And we're kind of back to where we started last year. I don't want to get too far ahead on Joseph, but watching Jordan Battle, very good athlete, easy mover. That pick that he had against Will Rogers that he returned for a touchdown, like you saw some of that speed, some of that pickup speed.
I saw on Twitter that you love Will Rogers, man. You're a big Will Rogers guy, huh?
I wanted to bring up Will Rogers, not to sidetrack too much. I don't get that at all. That throw, I was watching that game, and I know he was getting killed. Like, he was getting hit so much. But that throw to me epitomizes who he is as a player. That he floated that ball up, and if you have no idea what play I'm talking about, I'm sure it's on Twitter, the Jordan Battle pick six that he had. He floats the ball up on a ball that should have had a lot more zip. It took forever to get there, and that ball hung in the air, which allowed Jordan Battle, who's got good instincts, he knows how to play the ball when it's in the air, which flashed 100% on that play. Positives for Jordan Battle, big negatives for Will Rogers. I don't get the hype. He's probably going to throw for a ton of yards, but I don't think that's a highly draftable NFL quarterback.
I don't think he's a draftable NFL quarterback, if I'm being completely honest, man. He's a Mike Leach quarterback, right?
Yes.
So, like, he's going to put up 1 billion yards, to your point. He's going to put up some gaudy statistics, but, the kid has a lollipop for an arm. If I'm being honest, like, every out I saw him throw on film, I'm just like, it took 20 million years to get there. So, yeah, I agree with you. It's Will Rogers hype, great college quarterback, really good college quarterback. Not much of an NFL prospect, in my opinion.
But so Jordan Battle, though, to wrap my points on him, I mentioned this a second ago that the name is fitting because he's a very aggressive tackler. He is, for a free safety, my man comes down hard, trying to knock the hell out of people. The one thing I will note, though, Ryan, I think he's a big hitter, but he's not a great tackler. And all I mean by that is I don't think his technique is very good. I think he's a bit inconsistent, and he doesn't really fully wrap up. He's one of those guys that just launches his body at a ball carrier or an opposing receiver with the hope that he knocks the ball out or completely puts them in the ground. There's not really a lot of wrapping up, which can lead to misses on tape.
Yeah, he is a guy for me, Joe, and I would love to see if we saw him somewhat similarly. I did notice there was a couple missed tackles on film to your degree. There were some knockout blows that are tried to be taken. I see Jordan Battle, and this is why I'm going to push back on the early favor for safety one a little bit, just because he's 6'1", 205, 210 pounds. Good size safety. He's built really well. I think functionally, he's going to be a good all-around athlete, right? Like he changes directions well. He's got good range on the back end. He's a pretty good tackler for the most part, despite some misses on film. Everything is just kind of good, but I don't see anything near elite. This guy reminds me of like, you remember Justin Reed when he came out of Stanford?
Yeah.
He was like similar player to me. You know, he had a bigger frame. He was kind of good at everything, but he wasn't great at everything. And I think that's the separation from being a good to very good player and being a star. Like, I don't see star with Jordan Battle. I see good football player. Like, baseline, he's going to be a good to really good football player on the next level. I just don't see anything from a range perspective or athleticism perspective where I'm like, wow, he is going to force a ton of turnovers and he's going to do this, he's going to do that. I think he's a good football player. I don't think he's a great one.
The usage was different, but it kind of feels similar to Xavier Mckinney when he came out, where it was same deal. Xavier McKinney was not a crazy explosive athlete. He wasn't somebody that was checking all the boxes in the elite measurements for everything that he did, and he wasn't exceptional at everything, but he was really good, which earned him an early second round selection. Like, I would, considering how this class shapes out, I don't know if there is like an elite guy that I haven't gotten to yet, but it feels like he still might push himself a little bit above because he's well-rounded, he's well-coached, and could be like end of the first round type of a safety pick, which tends to happen. We always have these guys like 1 to 2 guys that sneak into the end of the first round just based on the value of safeties.
You know who he also reminds me a little bit of, just a little? You know, I was a big fan of Jaquan Brisker last year coming out of Penn State. I feel similarly about Battle that I did about Brisker, in the sense that, like, I liked everything about Jaquan Brisker, but like there was nothing where I was like star, you know, like Jaquan had a great start to his career in the first preseason game against Chicago. I thought he looked fantastic, but I think I said I would have drafted Jaquan maybe late first round, but he ends up going in the second round because I think it's a similar thing. I don't think that he has a standout elite trait where people are like, oh yeah, I could clamor towards that, right? But I think that, like Jaquan Brisker, Jordan Battle is going to be a starter at the next level. He's going to be a good football player at the next level. I guess I am just missing a little bit of dynamic ability. I don't think I see that overall. I'll say this though, Joe. That safety tandem for Alabama is stupid, man. I mean, they got Battle. They play a lot of too high, and then they'll play in the nickel. But they throw another safety in the nickel. So Jordan Battle, DeMarco Helms, who I wish we could have gotten to this week, is kind of like that headhunter alley runner. He's a really good football player as well. And they got this kid, Brian Branch, who I just watched yesterday for the first time, number 14. And man, Branch is good, man. He plays like in a lot of man coverage playing safety role in Alabama's defense. So, man, they got some dudes at Alabama. I think we should be shocked at this point, right? Like, wow, Alabama has more talent. Who would have thought? But Jordan Battle is a good football player. I think that's the end-all, be-all for me, is that he is going to be drafted. And I know we're not going to get fully into the projection yet, but he's going to get drafted pretty high because I think that he is a very safe football player, and I think he's got plus starter ability at the next level.
Yeah, that well-roundedness, and then coming from it's very hard to find an Alabama safety that doesn't check the boxes of being a consistent, strong football player and also not step in and have an impact in the NFL. Like you're talking about, though, I think that maybe that next step is preventing us from pushing him higher than maybe like the 25th pick in the first round. Like that's probably his absolute ceiling to me, is like 25. And then he pushes himself back towards more early day 2. But again, I'd be willing to draft him in the end of the first round. I think that he's somebody you bring in, he starts right away, and he makes an impact. You don't have to worry about him having significant issues and having to coach him up. He's going to be ready to go immediately.
Yeah, I guess I think we see him similarly.
Yes.
I just slightly value what he is. I think just slightly
less.
Like he's a second round player to me, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, again, Jaquan Brisker was a guy I loved last year. He ends up going in the second round. I think he's going to be a really good starting safety for the Bears for the foreseeable future. I see the same with Jordan Battle, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that you kind of see what the ceiling of Battle is already. Like you see the ceiling. There's some guys that we're going to talk about even this week that it's like, man, like they haven't even scratched their surface, right? Like they haven't even gotten close to the ceiling, and you don't even exactly know where the ceiling is. For Battle, I know where the ceiling is, and the ceiling is he's a really good football player. But I just the separation between really good star is what I'm kind of missing with Jordan Battle. But I think he's going to be a good starter at the next level.
Brandon Joseph fits what you're talking about there of like where's the ceiling with this guy and can he reach it? Very thin, lean safety compared to Battle. He's listed at like 190 pounds. What do we have on him for his background?
So he's out of College Station, Texas. Originally went to Northwestern. Joe, he has now been recruited twice because he came out of College Station originally, College Station High School, goes to Northwestern, transfers from Northwestern this offseason to go to Notre Dame. Now, he's a very academically driven player, so I understand it, but how does Texas A&M let this kid get out of College Station twice? How does this happen, man? It's literally right in their backyard.
His star rating? Was he highly recruited?
That's the reason for the first miss, right? The first miss is he was a 3-star recruit. He was rated as the 127th ranked player, according to 24/7, in the state of Texas in the 2019 class. Crap. So 127 in the entire state, despite having 95 tackles, 10 pass breakups, 5 interceptions, 5 tackles for loss, 2 forced fumbles, all that as a senior. Also scored touchdowns on kick return, punt return, and on the fumble recovery. All-state honoree in 2018 as well. So I don't 100% understand why, because I think he played he played 5A ball in the state of Texas. So it's not like the lowest level in Texas by far. And yet, Joe, very underrated player, even though he was an all-state player, led them to a state championship, I believe, College Station as well. So I don't know why he was underrated to that degree, to be honest. I think that you saw, he said red shirts at Northwestern, has a dominant year at redshirt freshman, 6 interceptions in the abbreviated season, led all of college football in interceptions that year, I think tied for the most of college football. Had that one-handed sick interception in the Big Ten title game against Ohio State that year. Was a All-American, preseason All-American this year. Again, an all-conference selection this year. I don't think he played as well in 2021 as he did in 2020, but still, 9 interceptions in 2 years. He's been a fantastic football player for Northwestern and now for Notre Dame as their starting free safety.
So watching him, very good football player too, that you see just overall, but he's a good athlete. I don't think he's like a crazy twitchy one that's like a 4.3 guy. He's a good athlete. He's an above average athlete. The one thing I have to acknowledge first in terms of his negatives, he is a terrible tackler. Like he can't tackle. Every time he goes to make a tackle, he falls to his knees and he swipes with his hands, and like that's it. Like there's no attempt to actually make a play on the tackler. Like I don't know what he's doing.
Joe, there's some good tackles on film, though. I agree. Like there's way too many misses. You're absolutely correct.
For the amount of bad tackles compared to the good ones, it's too significant.
No. The low lights on his film are bad. I'm not arguing about that at all.
Okay.
I think the biggest thing for him is I think it's a technical issue. I don't think it's a want-to issue because I see him. There's a lot of times where like I think he's just going a little bit out of control. Like everything's kind of moving a little bit fast at times. I think he's kind of forcing things a little bit too much, and it kind of sacrifices technique and he misses tackles. Like I was watching what game was it, man? There was one game where like the missed tackles were like atrocious. I can't remember which one it was.
Michigan was the one that I saw that he was.
Blake
left
Corum
and right.
Blake Corum put him in the blender, man. In one play against Michigan. But in that same game, he has a few nice tackles. He has a sack in that game against Michigan.
Yeah.
Like there are some good spots in the tackling department, but I agree. That's the biggest thing for me is I need him to be a much more consistent tackler. Like he doesn't have to be incredible because my comp for him, honestly, is Jesse Bates. Like he reminds me a lot of Jesse Bates. And Jesse Bates was like same height coming out of Wake Forest. Good athlete, not an exceptional athlete, but like a twitchy kid, right? Like he had really good short area twitch to him. And he just had like that proactiveness working in deep zone and pass coverage. But Jesse Bates was also not a good tackler coming out of Wake Forest. Like he missed so many tackles and he still misses a lot of tackles for Cincinnati. When you make so many plays in the passing game, sometimes people kind of look the other way on the tackling issues. But I agree. Brandon Joseph needs to clean up the tackling because last year in spurts, it was bad. It wasn't like average or below average. Like it was really bad at times.
And it's not like he was on a team that is known for producing well-coached, dominant defensive players. Like he was at Northwestern, and maybe being a part of Marcus Freeman's staff, being coached and coached up by Al Golden and in that whole group at Notre Dame, he's going to make improvements. But the one thing I will say is I don't want this dude playing down in the box as often as he was being used at Northwestern. They need to use him as over the top. And you know more than I will how he's probably going to be used at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
But we need to stop asking him to come down and to be the sole one-on-one tackler against the run. Like that was stupid watching him do that. The amount of runs that he gave up because there was no help behind him.
Yeah.
Was very concerning. But yeah, I would like to not see any more of that.
He was a weird player on film too because the tackling issues were not nearly there in 2020 compared to 2021. And I also think it was because 2020 there were better players around him, and 2021 he was kind of trying to do a little bit too much at times, trying to make maybe a few plays that he probably shouldn't even have, attempted in that regard, right? So I think he just pressed a little bit in 2021. We'll see what version, because if we get 2020 version, I mean, this kid's a potential first-round pick, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If we get 2021 version, then this is a third to fourth-round player. Like that, I think there's a big separation for me as far as the player we get. But the best parts of Brandon Joseph, Joe, best parts, when he's able to work from depth, from the roof, like you're saying, he has some great instincts in pass coverage, man. I mean, he covers a good amount of grounds, and he's got proactiveness against the pass, and he makes some rangy plays, which I don't think is actually strictly because of his range. I think his range is good, but I think more than anything, he's just got great eyes, man, and great instincts on the back end, and he covers a lot of ground because he's just there maybe a hair earlier than most players are because he just sees the game so well. And the best part about him, he's got tremendous ball skills. Absolutely, man. Like 9 interceptions last 2 years. He's going to be playing the boundary safety for Notre Dame, so he's going to be playing on the roof a lot as they rotate down. And he also might be their main punt returner as well, which will tell you a little bit about the hands, right? Like they trust him back there with his ball skills, and I love him as far as being a deep safety with rangy instincts, ability to play the football in the air, and do all those things working from depth. I think that he has a high upside in that role at the next level.
That's always added upside when you can return kicks. I think just based on the concerns, though, and wanting him to clean them up, I kind of see him as a mid to late second-round guy currently. Maybe a little bit later than that. But me being optimistic, I think, is the optimistic outlook on him is mid-second round until he fixes those deficiencies that we've talked about.
We're on the same page with this one because I was going to say last year I mocked him before the season in the late first rounds, like in the 20s. And then he has a very up and down 2021 season. I just said that I think he was more like a third to fourth round player on film in 2021. So I'm going to split the difference, Joe. I'm going to say late first to third to fourth round. I'm going to be in the middle as well. I'm going to say late second, somewhere in that ballpark is where I would peg him right now. I do think he has the upside of being a late first round pick, but he also does have the downside that if he's the same player he was last year, he's going to be fighting to get even drafted on day 2. So that's the separation factor for me. But I do think that what Brandon Joseph does well is very valuable on the next level. But the tackling issues cannot be a debilitating factor where it just takes everything away from those instincts that he has.
Which is currently doing.
Yes, which it does at times. Absolutely. Last year, there were times where like he would even have a great game in pass coverage, but like it was just the woes in the run game at times where you just be like, okay, man, but like you need to be better than that. Like your baseline as a tackler needs to be at least solid so you're not a debilitating factor. So I think that that's the range that I'm comfortable with as well, as I would say mid to late second round pick right now. But I do think he has the upside of a late first if he puts it all together.
One of the few instances that we don't have a lot of disagreement. Yeah,
Yes.
not that we didn't have discourse, but not a lot of disagreement on both these guys, which is interesting. We're gonna get to tomorrow. JL Skinner, Antonio Johnson. Be sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out. At Joe DeLeone, at Rising Draft. We'll be back with more. Enjoy the rest of your day, folks.